Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Guitar Villains. Why guitar villains, you ask? Well, because villains are cooler than heroes. It's just a fact. This is a podcast by guitar players for guitar players, and over the course of this series, we'll chat with some of the most innovative and creative minds in the guitar community, find out what makes them tick, and understand how we can become better guitar players ourselves. Thank you for watching the video podcast here on YouTube, and of course you can also listen to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Today's guitar villain is John Petrucci, a legendary riff writer, almighty shred lord, dedicated gym rat, purveyor of fine bourbon, an all-around nice guy. This bearded phenom, who some believe to be a wizard or even God himself, is here to spill his guitar secrets. John has recently dropped on us his second solo album entitled Terminal Velocity, which we'll dive deep into. I'll also be challenging the prog prince in ways he's never been challenged before, so let's get right to it. The very first episode of Guitar Villains. Welcome to Guitar Villains, the show where we deconstruct and decode the guitar. And John, I actually haven't told you this, but you're actually the inaugural guest on the show.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
I'm honored.
You're
That's
batting
awesome.
leadoff.
Okay. All right. Let's hope this is going to determine how
Yes, this
moves
is it.
forward from here. Yeah.
I don't want to make any promises or ruffle any feathers, but I think that this is going to be the greatest podcast about guitar and guitar players in the entire world.
Wow.
So I'm setting the bar there.
High expectations. Let's see.
I think we're gonna meet him. But you just released a new solo album, and we're gonna dive into it soon. But I have to ask, when you release a new album or finish a huge project, how do you celebrate?
How do I celebrate? Oh man, probably with some bourbon. It's probably the best way.
Okay. Any bourbon of choice?
I have so many bourbons that I really, really enjoy. I love Blanton's. I love Elijah Craig. There's just so many different ones out there that are incredible that I've been, experimenting with and enjoying. I think it's important to. I always like to sort of make a conscious note that something was accomplished. Whether it's like between my wife and I, and say, you know what, I did this. I feel really good about this. I really, let's have a drink or a toast, or with, my engineer, Jimmy T, or Andy Sneap, who mixed the record, to just say, whether you take a second out, on a call or in person or with a text, like, hey, man, I feel really great about this. We accomplished it. I think that's a good way to sort of celebrate and just, don't let it the moment just kind of like pass by and
it
move
is
on to the
hard,
next thing.
especially now where it's kind of fast pace in anything we do. But speaking to music, like, it's so easy to just say on to the next one and forget what you just spent like your entire life, it feels like, doing.
Right.
So
right, exactly. Yeah, you want to sort of savor it.
Yes, just like a glass of bourbon. I think my go-to is it's an accident that I discovered this, but I was at a whiskey bar and I ordered this thing called Yellow Spot.
Okay.
And I was like, what's a really nice whiskey? And he's like, we got Green Spot, we got Yellow Spot. And let's just say I'd already had a couple. So I was like, all right, I trust you. And it turned out to be $100 pour. So,
oh no, one of those.
But
nice.
He told me about it halfway through, so I managed to savor, just like you mentioned, that second half. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about that bartender anymore, but
right, he could have warned you before.
It is what it is. I fell into that trap. So we'll do things a little bit differently on this show. We're going to play some games. I'm going to try and get to the bottom of what makes you tick as a musician. Hopefully you'll have a great time. And maybe next time you're in Nashville, where I live, and the world is a little more stable, we can do this again over a glass of bourbon.
That sounds like fun. Absolutely.
Awesome. So this show is called Guitar Villains because I think villains are cooler than heroes. I'm always found the characters are a little more deeper and more memorable.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, out of all the movie or comic book villains out there, who would you say you identify with the most? And this could be something as simple as appearance or as nuanced as the character trait that you share.
Oh my God.
And if you want, I can give you my answer for which villain I think you're most like, and you can respond with a different choice or agree.
That I like to take your approach because you can go in all these different universes, right? You can go Disney, Marvel, DC. You can even go with you watch The Boys.
Yes.
You can go. That's a great show. I mean,
okay.
So it depends. Yeah, let me hear yours and let's see.
Okay, so I think there's the easy answer and then there's the correct answer. I think the easy answer is Thanos from the Marvel universe. So, and I guess you're familiar. At his peak, he controlled the 6 Infinity Stones, which are mind, power, reality, soul, space, and time. And to relate this to guitar, you have all these things: the mind, which is like the knowledge of the fretboard; the power, which is blistering shred abilities; reality, which I think is like bringing the music in your head, like from your head into existence; soul, which of course is like, your vibrato in particular; mind, which allows you to come up with the music you write; and finally time, which I think goes without saying, your rhythm. And
wow, you really gave this a lot of I was, Thanos popped into my mind as well, but I was just going to say, just because he's a big burly guy.
That was my final point. He's kind of like a buff godlike figure, and you kind of fit that bill from aesthetics perspective.
But I like your analyzation. That's awesome.
Okay, well, good. So I think that's the easy one, the low hanging fruit. But I think your actual supervillain counterpart is Arcade, and he's also from the Marvel universe. Do you know who Arcade is?
I don't. You have to.
Okay, it's a little bit of a deep cut. He's from the X-Men. He's an X-Men antagonist, and he designed and built this place called Murder World, and it's like a subterranean evil lair disguised as an amusement park, which can sometimes describe the music of Dream Theater. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So Arcade, he lured his victims into this murder world, and that sort of resembled a life-size pinball machine. And I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
I'm going to play you a little sound clip, and I just want to get your reaction.
Yep.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that from the Necronomicon?
Yes. Yes, it was.
I was like, I know this sounds familiar. It kind of sounds like me, but I'm not sure. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's from a Sega Saturn Japanese-only release pinball game from the 90s. And
I can't believe you found that. How do you get the music to that? It's just something like
I have my ways
out online.
I have my ways.
Nice.
Yeah, it's got to be the coolest pinball soundtrack of all time, right?
Yeah, I was asked for that project to make like these really short thing, like an intro 1.5-minute thing and an outro thing, and that was the first time and the last time I ever did anything like that. I think doing more music for gaming would be awesome.
Yeah. I think you should dive down that rabbit hole next. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, you're like Arcade. You're like the evil pinball wizard.
Okay, perfect.
That's where
great.
I came from. That.
That's definitely deep. I never would have thought of that, but I'm going with it.
Yeah, I'm glad to bring up some old memories. So first things first, I have a couple kind of softball lobs for you.
Yeah.
And I call this segment Burning Questions.
Okay.
So these are rapid fire questions that if you were to conduct a live masterclass or a live stream where anybody could ask you any questions about anything they want regarding guitar or music, these are the questions they would ask.
Okay.
Instead of asking you about like guitar playing secrets or wisdom or anything else that could possibly help them become a better guitar player, they would no doubt spam you with these questions.
Gotcha.
Which don't totally matter, in my opinion, but for some reason they must be answered.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What gauge pick do you use?
It's that's a good question because I have a few different signature versions. I have a flow pick that's 2 millimeter. The general size of a Jazz 3, like my Trinity, is, I don't know exact. It's probably like 1.3 in that zone. So somewhere in that zone. One is too light.
Okay, one is too light. We can leave it at that.
One is too light for me.
What gauge strings do you use?
I use 10 through 46 Ernie Ball.
All right. What's your number one guitar?
My number one guitar currently is my Ernie Ball Music Man Majesty Nebula, the purple Nebula one. That's the one I've been playing the most.
Delightful. What's your favorite amp?
My favorite amp. These are easy questions. You're right, softball. It's my Mesa Boogie Signature JP2C. It's like the best amplifier on the planet. Best one ever made.
Finally, what's your favorite guitar pedal?
I really, really love. It sounds. I'm always my signature, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to design these with these incredible companies, manufacturers, and families. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say the Dunlop JP95 wah. That's just an unbelievable wah, crybaby wah.
You
pedal.
mean this one?
And that one right there, and it looks so badass in the.
It does.
The dark chrome and
I was gonna save this, but now that you brought it up, I want to play you a little sound clip of something.
Nice. Is that you?
Yeah,
Good
man.
job.
This wah pedal, it just makes me play differently.
Yes.
And I was gonna say it kind of makes me. It channels like you have a really big influence in that sort of style. When I play that kind of music, I kind of have you and a couple other guitar players as my primary influences. But I think in the best way, because sometimes you sort of become a lesser version maybe of somebody you're trying to emulate. But I think that's what I love about this guitar pedal is it sort of gives me that epic, really deep sound that isn't really common in a lot of wah pedals, but allows me to still kind of play like myself, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It enables you to express, yourself to the truest, and your playing sounds great. I mean, what I love about the sound of that pedal is that it has so much attitude to it. Like you just recognize, there's lots of different wah pedals out there, and they're all doing a similar type of thing. But this pedal just has tons of attitude. And one of the things that we did with this as well, which is I'm all about the practicality of gear.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to performance, and the fact that when you turn it on, it glows blue around the front of your foot, and you know that it's on, is something that was really important to me. Because there's been so many times where I'm playing a wah, I think I'm playing a wah, and I think I'm hearing it, but nothing's actually on.
Or the worst is when it's accidentally on.
Yes.
And you leave it on like in the lowest, and it's like, why is my tone just like mud? What's happening?
It's so dark, yeah. And I like the other thing I should say too, that I was so proud to develop my Dreamscape pedal with TC Electronic. I mean, that was...
You mean this one?
I mean that one. Look at you.
We didn't plan this. I just had them on hand.
That's like a dream come true pedal, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Because I use forever and ever the TC SCF pedal, the original stereo chorus flanger black pedal with the cable that was connected to it and everything, and that was a big part of my sound. And this was the first signature pedal that TC ever did.
Oh, is that right?
In fact, yeah, and I could be wrong. We have to look at their site. It might be the only one.
Huh.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know they've done like the
artists,
tone print stuff, but
they've done tone prints. But
this is like the only one with somebody's name on it. that I know
That
of.
might be true. Yeah, that might be true. So, to be able to look at that original SEF and say, what would you want to change, and putting forth my, again, practical ideas, it's a little bit noisy. It, could be a little smaller. I'd like more flexibility here. I'd like it to be true bypass, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically that is that original SCF pedal, but a modernized version of it. So that was a true honor to get to do that with them.
Yeah, this is a killer pedal. I love it for anything modulation or otherwise. They have tons of things on there. So you just released a new album, Terminal Velocity, and I'm not going to ask why there's a 15-year gap between your two solo releases, because I imagine there were countless obligations like tours, Dream Theater tours. You had Liquid Tension Experiment there for a minute. There was G3, developing your own signature gear. And like, oh, by the way, having some semblance of a regular life with your family and things like that, I'm sure.
You couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
I would have said the same thing. It's 100% accurate.
And so I guess things didn't really sync up until this weird chunk of time and isolation. We've all been force-fed thanks to this damn coronavirus. But it seems like you made the best of it. I've heard you mention you recorded Terminal Velocity between March and May.
Yeah.
And my question is, it seems like you cranked this out like in an unbelievably short time, but it sounds like something that somebody could have worked on for years. So,
right.
John, how much pent-up creativity have you been holding?
Well, like you said, with that gap of time in between, I didn't have the type of time that I like to dedicate towards doing records. I mean, the last Dream Theater record, Distance Over Time, that took 5 months. The band went away to a remote location. I produced it, so I was there every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll spend 10-hour days in the studio. So with Terminal Velocity, I had planned on doing it, starting it in March before the pandemic hit, but then it hit and we were on lockdown. So obviously I had more time than I thought. But even with that, I was in the studio, 5 days a week, 10 or more hours a day. And that's the way I like to work. I like to just completely immerse myself in the project, in the headspace, and work really hard. Now, 5 of the songs are brand new that I wrote, in March in that period. 3 of the songs I had written already and had some demos. 2 of them I played live on G3, and 1 was a really old song that I resurrected. So, I didn't have to write from scratch all of the material, but more than half of it is brand new. But I guess that's the short answer, is just working really intense, long days for a consistent period of time, not taking time off, and just really getting into it.
Great. Well, we're going to talk more about Terminal Velocity in a bit, but right now I want to play a little game I call Name Those Notes.
Oh my God.
So the concept is pretty simple. I'll play a quick sequence of guitar notes from songs that you have recorded over the years.
Oh boy.
And you have to tell me from which songs these notes come from.
You got to be kidding me. I'm going to fail this miserably.
I've recorded a few podcasts. Like I said, you're the inaugural guest. Your episode's coming out first. Every person I've told this segment to, have set it up, they've all said exactly what you said, but you may surprise yourself.
Okay, let's see what happens.
So we're going to see how well you know your catalog and how well you can recognize your guitar playing, and it'll spur some conversation about the music too.
Awesome.
So we're going to start with something easy that I think you'll get right away, and then things will get progressively harder.
Okay.
Okay? So here is the first flurry of notes.
That's from Dance of Eternity, right? No, it's from Metropolis.
Very good.
Yeah, Dance of Eternity, to be fair, has a similar
I thought that
section.
You might pick that up, though.
Yeah. Dance of Eternity and Scenes from Memory is based on Metropolis, so
Right.
the instrumental Dance of Eternity has that same sequence of notes. So I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong. Yeah, you're right twice almost. So that song in particular, it's one of my favorites
cool.
that you guys do. And I was wondering, I don't know if you've heard this trope before. I'm sure you have, offhanded, maybe not said to your face, but what do you say to people who say that guitarists who play a lot of notes aren't as musical or don't have emotion in their guitar playing?
Yeah. I never bought into that statement ever. You know, to me, yeah, as an instrumentalist, you should, this is my philosophy at least.
Sure.
You should have the ability to produce anything that your mind sort of thinks of. You know, think about classical composers writing symphonies for all these different instruments and stuff, you know, demanding that the violins do this crazy thing over here. And then, and this section of the music requires complete discipline and tone and beauty, and you have to be able to do everything in between. You know, it just because you develop that side, that craft side of the instrument that you play, doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to be expressive on the instrument. You know, so I don't buy into that argument at all. I think it's false, and
I agree. Yeah. And I often find, and we're keeping this ambiguous, but I often find those who may be saying things like that or have that notion can't necessarily execute on what it is they're criticizing, if that makes sense.
It could be some of that for sure. It's kind of like a lazy statement, you know, because you're not really, you're not really thinking about it. If you listen to guitar players who are known to be super expressive, you know, whether you're thinking of Stevie Ray Vaughan or whoever that may be, or Neil Schon, or I mean, these guys like shred their heads off, you know. So, and some of the most shredding guys are able to play melodies like no other. And, you know, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Steve Morse, my favorite guitar player of all time. And the guy can play anything and, you know, has these beautiful, beyond beautiful melodies and compositions and sequences of chords and notes that are just incredible.
Yeah.
Somebody like Tommy Emmanuel, I mean, I saw him live in New York City, and the guy has technique, you know, for days and days and days, like a freaking freight train. But meanwhile, I'm watching him and I'm like crying literally because there's so much emotion exuding out of him. So that argument is dead in the water as far as I'm concerned. You know, people's ability to command their instrument, if anything, gives them more, not all the time, but, you know, a lot of times gives them more of the connection to the emotional part, you know.
We'll leave it at that. Just a sidebar, Tommy is going to be on the show next week. I'm talking with him, so can I let him know that he made you cry in a good way?
100%. Say hello. Say hello to Tommy. Tell him I love him. And that was it. That was like the first time I cried while watching a live performance.
I think I welled up a little bit when I heard him do like Classical Gas or something like that.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh my, that's a guitar. That's one man.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I was in the audience with my wife Raina, and he recognized me, and it's like told me to come backstage in between, and I was like, what? How do you how do you even see the audience? You know. Anyway, it was a really great moment. But he is just such a monster musician and player.
Yeah,
absolutely blown away by him. So please say hello. I hope he's doing well.
I will do. All right, let's move on to another song. You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
That's Jaws of Life from Suspended Animation, right?
That's exactly what it is.
Nice.
I'm so glad you got that one.
I don't know if I recognize myself or Dave LaRue doing the old bass thumping there.
That moment is the best part of your entire first solo album, in my opinion.
Cool. Nice.
Because of just what you mentioned, the groove that's happening between the rhythm section and that melody, which is actually the lick. Do you know the lick?
The lick. I don't know the lick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me play this for you again. It's the progressive metal version of the lick. And I don't
Ah,
think
of
it's
like,
ever been pointed out, but I
oh,
had to
that's
shed
really
light on that.
funny. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I subconsciously, you know, channeled the lick in that.
It happens. That's what happens. That's why it's such a stigma. Not even negatively. It's just like this thing that's built into musicians, and it transcends genre. People think it's just a jazz thing, but
No, absolutely not.
it goes everywhere.
What
So
what I like about that section, and I did this on Terminal Velocity as well with playing with the trio, is when recording in the studio, it's very easy to kind of get into the idea of during guitar solo sections, there's going to be a rhythm guitar playing, and for the most part, on Suspended Animation and on Terminal Velocity, there is. But I purposely picked a few moments to just keep it trio, like we are jamming live. There's no rhythm guitars, and you could really hear what the drums and bass are doing, you know, to support the soloists. And in that case, that's a great example of that. I think on Terminal, it might be in The Way Things Fall. There might be a couple of moments and in a couple of songs where I do the same, where I just lose the rhythm guitars and we're trio, and it just sounds like we're really jamming together, which I love the sound of that.
let's move on to another sound, shall we? We're getting a little more challenging here. Okay.
Oh boy. That's not me. What is that?
Would you like to hear it again?
I don't even know what that's. All right, are you tricking? Is that my playing, or is it
You
somebody
already. I'll give you the point. It is not you,
else? Okay.
but it is. I'm not. I don't know for sure, but I'm 99.9% sure you are aware of this person and know where this comes from.
Huh. Okay.
You may have already mentioned this person on the podcast.
Really?
He
Okay.
may be your favorite person.
Is that a Steve Morse thing?
It is. Do you know
What
what it
is
could
that?
possibly be from? Here, let me play it again.
I don't know. It almost sounds like, based on the record, it almost like sounds like a. Is that from like a guitar clinic or a master class or something?
It's from Power Lines.
Oh,
His
nice,
instructional
nice.
VHS.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's that one. There's a Steve Morse instructional. I think I had the cassette for it, and I don't know if he did like a couple of different ones.
Okay.
But this one particular one that I had all of these exercises, like one note per string, two note, 3, 4, that I still practice
The
like every
ascending,
day.
like 3-note per string stuff.
Yeah, it was like he broke it down, and I love this method that he did, and I use it and I teach it myself, where he basically taught like a one note per string thing that you would play chromatically up the neck, and then a 2-note per string thing.
Yeah,
a 3-note
I was
per string
struggling
thing, and
to.
a 4.
I was trying to figure out which one of the exercises to choose that I thought you would recognize immediately, but I figured because that one actually sounded a little like I could kind of hear some of you in that sound, if it makes sense. And
it does make sense. I don't, for some reason, I'm not, specifically remembering that one, but
yeah.
I mean, Steve, when I started playing guitar, I was 12 years old. I grew up on Long Island in New York. There's a lot of rock music playing on the radio. That was probably my first influence, was just learning AC/DC and Zeppelin and stuff like that. And Ozzy came out with Blizzard and learning all that. But as I started to get better, I had like my friend's older brother, or like friend of their older brother, who were just old enough to like go to the bars and see the shows, and they'd see the Dregs play in New York, and they'd see Al Di Meola play, and those guys, would turn me on. There's this one guy in particular turned me on to Steve Morse, and when I heard him play, it just changed, my whole perspective on guitar playing. Like I knew that I wanted to be able to play like that and have this powerful right hand technique, and it changed everything, changed my whole course, and I tried to learn all that music and stuff. So Steve was a huge, huge influence on me musically.
That's great. I'm sure you've been that for guitar players as well, John. let's finish up here. Last sound. Ready?
Yeah. Well, that's Temple of Circadia.
Only took 3 notes. Technically
3
2
notes.
notes.
I did the game you're doing at my last Guitar Universe camp.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I
This isn't a completely original idea then.
Well, no, it's a great idea. I love it, but I did it, playing in real time in front of the audience,
Okay.
and I would do it by a note or 2 notes or whatever, and people would guess. But I did one song with no notes, and people had to guess. Yeah, they had to guess what I was getting ready to play.
Can you reveal? Is there a way to do that without having a guitar in your hands?
Probably not.
Okay, we'll just leave that up to maybe go to the camp next year when it comes back. And you'll
It had more to do with my stance and the guitar I was holding. Okay, what? I said to everybody, this one's going to be really difficult. You have to name this song in no notes. It's like, okay, go. I don't remember if anybody got it, but it was pretty fun.
That's awesome. Well, let's segue to talk about terminal velocity since you just got that one right. That was the first couple of notes. Pronounce that one again for me.
Temple of Circadia. So,
okay.
The phrase that your circadian rhythm.
Yep.
Your sleep cycle and all that. I just love the name, that Circadia. When I think about it, it just sounds like a land in Game of Thrones or something. Circadia,
Yeah.
So yeah. I wasn't even sure if it was a word.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it is a word. But
well, that's the beauty of like instrumental music. You can kind of, there's no holds barred for naming these songs. It's kind of whatever you want.
Exactly. And the cool thing of, the tie-in, if it is a word and it has anything to do with your circadian rhythm, having to do with your sleep cycle and stuff, that obviously ties into dreams and dream theater and that surreal world. So that was my thinking with that one.
Today's episode of Guitar Villains is brought to you by Guitar Super System. Are you tired of YouTube ads telling you that YouTube guitar lessons suck? Me too. I don't know about you, but somebody setting an acoustic guitar on fire or teaching crappy cover songs in front of a musty black curtain feels a little disingenuous to me. I'll get straight to the point. Join tens of thousands of other guitar players and visit guitarsupersystem.com to join the most popular independent guitar learning platform on the internet. If you're a beginner, there's an entire curriculum called the Beginner's Corner just for you. If you're an expert, the music theory and technique curriculums reach the highest levels of mastery and are based on industry standard learning methods I've used since graduating Berklee College of Music. If you're somewhere in the middle, you're actually the perfect candidate. The Choose Your Destiny approach allows you to cater your learning experience to exactly what you want to accomplish, whether that's improving your improvising, ear training, learning new techniques, songwriting, and more. You'll also have access to private live streams, lesson comments, and a community forum for feedback, as well as exclusive giveaways and new curriculum releases. The best part is everything that I just mentioned is included in one monthly subscription, and you can cancel anytime, or, like a lot of people do, upgrade your subscription to a yearly pass. Of course, you can also just learn guitar right on YouTube for free, because YouTube guitar lessons don't suck if you know where to look. So check out guitarsupersystem.com. Now, back to Guitar Villains.
Yeah, so Terminal Velocity, I've listened to it a couple of times. It's kind of an upbeat, like uplifting album overall, which I have to say it was a welcome sound in my house.
That's great.
After all this crazy, shit we've been dealing with in the past year, it was unexpectedly awesome and a good feeling. And I mean, there's even a song called Happy Song. And
that's right.
I want to ask you, it's so difficult to write memorable melodies. And I think as guitar players, especially, we often struggle with like motifs, and especially in the instrumental space specifically. But you managed to do the opposite with this song, which is to take a lot of notes, but still kind of make it memorable, like a memorable phrase that you come back to. And this is, this happens a lot. Glasgow Kiss comes to mind a little bit.
Sure.
The main theme that kicks off Happy Song is a perfect example. So do you outline like 4 notes first that you really like and then fill in the gaps, or is it a lick that you come up with all at once? What's your strategy for writing a fast hook, so to speak?
Sometimes it starts with a technique that I'm working on. In the case of Happy Song, it was a technique. It was a legato technique that I was just fooling around with. And and I don't remember how I was originally doing it, maybe in a scale or something. And then I just started like skipping a string, and then wait, what if I made that major? And then it just turned into like this cool motif. And I've said this many times, I've been doing a lot of press in support of this record, so you might have heard me say this over and over, but whenever that happens and I'm in that moment and my brain goes, hey, that's kind of cool sounding, I record it immediately.
Yeah.
Just so I have it. I have some kind of reference and I don't forget it. And so, like I said, in the case of that, it stemmed from a technique I was practicing that I morphed into something that signaled to myself like, hey, this is cool sounding. I should do something with this. So that's how that particular one happened. So it didn't come from a melodic space. It didn't come from sometimes ideas come from, I want to use this tonality.
Oh yeah.
Like terminal velocity is very melodic, major.
The title
sound.
track. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the title track. So it's like I wanted to use that tonality, that modality. But this one came from like a technique that morphed into a lick that I thought was cool.
Terminal velocity almost has like, it sort of brought me back. I went to high school in the early thousands, and it sort of brought me back to kind of like a pop punk almost. It's a sound I haven't necessarily heard from you before.
Right, right.
Where did that actual song? Because like the happiness is obviously there, but it's like got this kind of more straight ahead feel for some of the song.
Well, yeah, I mean that song, again, when I collect ideas, they only exist as sort of these seeds. It could only last for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it is. When I sat down in March to write the album Terminal Velocity, I had done some work on the computer ahead of time, sort of organizing all those ideas, making note of which ones I thought were the best ones, maybe which ones sort of like went together in key or tonality and might make a song somehow. But when I sat down in March, the first thing I wrote was the song Terminal Velocity, and all that I had was that little opening motif. And so I literally started with that, recorded that, programmed some drums, played bass, and I had the first little chunk, and then just started writing the music, and it developed organically into the song. So I don't really know where the other parts of the mood of that song came from inspirationally, but it started just from that little first seed. And the interesting thing about writing a record this way by myself, the only other person in the room is my engineer, Jimmy T. There's no other band members or musicians I'm bouncing ideas off of. Oh, what do you have? Where should this go? It's just sort of my own creative brain saying, all right, it might be interesting to go here, and let's see what happens. So it's like you're building a house from the ground up, but you don't really have a blueprint for the house. All you have is the foundation.
That's
so
a good
it's
way
an
to do
interesting way, yeah.
Yeah. And it could be like maybe mildly refreshing too, because you have like bands and you work in that environment. So when you do especially something that's a little bit more personal, like a solo album, it could be cool to have that bit of isolation.
Exactly. And you kind of let it's almost like more of a stream of consciousness type of writing, where you're letting the next part develop from where the last part left off. And it's fun. It's a fun way of writing. It's a little less structured. And I think the songs kind of come out interesting, and they reflect a deeper part of your imagination, because you're just doing it on the spot and you're not really sure where you're going. So it's fun.
Well, another song that was a pretty new sound from you, at least to me it was, Out of the Blue, which is this lovely blues ballad. And that must have been, as a guitar player, it must have been pretty satisfying to record that one. I don't know. It sounded like you really channeled your inner like Gary Moore almost.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love playing that style. I mean, again, with these different seeds of ideas that I had, that was one of them, that opening melody and chord progression. It just stood out to me as, you know what, I really want to do something with this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but I want to do something with it. And it because the basic structure is a blues with just, some substituted chords in there, on the turnarounds. It turned into a blues song. It turned into that sort of shuffle that you feel on the drums, and that super bluesy, expressive Gary Moore kind of way of playing, or Carlos Santana, whatever. I love that. I love doing that. It just like, I don't know. You nailed it. It's really satisfying. And a lot of the soloing and melodic playing on that is improvised. It's from when I was laying out, initially, okay, here's the chord progression. Let me quickly do a melody over the top. Let me quickly just improvise a solo. A lot of that we kept. So I think for a blues type of thing, that it's sort of important to the spirit of to maintain the spirit of improvisation on a song like that. I think is important.
Yeah, that totally makes sense for that genre, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the highlight, if one pops to your head, what's the highlight on the album for you?
The highlight on the album. Oh man.
Or it could be like a memory centered around it if you can't pick just one thing.
Well, I'll tell you what was sort of fun for me that I never did before, even though I'm a huge fan. I talked about when I was younger getting turned on to Steve Morris and Al Di Meola. The live record Friday Night in San Francisco with Al Di Meola, Paco de Lucia, and John McLaughlin was a huge, huge influence on me. Again, for that right hand playing, just being able to have a command of the instrument technically. And of course, that's all on acoustic.
Yep.
Getting into, we talked about Tommy, getting into gypsy jazz, getting turned on to Joshua Stefan, the German gypsy jazz guitar player, who's also doing my camp next year. And playing that kind of style a lot, like at home or whatever, but never putting it on an album.
Yeah.
The moment in Gemini comes to mind where I do a solo in that style in the middle of that song, kind of goes to a Latin feel, and all of a sudden there's a acoustic sort of, Al Di Meola-ish gypsy jazz style played on a gypsy jazz.
I felt like I was in like Van Helsing, like some medieval caravan flying through the desert, running from vampires or something.
That's it. Just transported you right then and there.
Yeah.
So that was a cool moment.
It's funny you brought up that Al Di Meola, that live cut. I was also heavily influenced before I even played guitar. I heard Mediterranean Sundance, and
nice.
I was just like, "Whoa, what is that?" And every time I hear that style, and you flawlessly executed on that, which is, testament to your musicianship. That's hard. You can't fake that. So you clearly spent a lot of time doing. You didn't just sit down and be like, "All right, so I'm going to do this little flamenco thing or whatever."
Right. There's definitely, especially on acoustic guitar, there's definitely an element of technique you have to develop. But, it's a side. And that guitar that I played it on it's a Selmer Macaferri D-hole gypsy style guitar, which is, they use a different kind of string on it. The scale is a bit different. It's meant to be sort of a loud guitar. And it requires like some comfort playing on that kind of guitar. But if you listen to that Django style, man, it's just wild, because it's basically shred acoustic through jazz changes. It's like it took me a long time to like get turned on to. I don't know why, but
it's intimidating almost.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's like right up my alley. I mean, I saw a show at Carnegie Hall with Al Di Meola doing this Django Fest, and he's got every last person can just shred acoustic. It was like, where have I been? How did I miss this? So it was fun to put something like that on the record.
Are you a Gemini?
I am not a Gemini. I'm a Cancer.
Where did Gemini come from?
So Gemini was, again, that song is the oldest song on the album. I wrote it way back in early, mid-90s. I used to do a lot of guitar clinics, at the NAMM show and things like that. And I had a bunch of songs that I programmed on this little sequencer that I would play as like demo songs at the clinics. That was one of them. And my father-in-law at the time, he was alive. He's no longer alive. But my wife's father, I played it for him in our apartment where we were living at the time. And he was like, that should be called Gemini. It just like came to his head.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, I'll call it Gemini.
Great.
And so he named it. So that's a great tribute to him. And, the version on the record where it does go from acoustic to electric solo, I guess sort of illustrates that Gemini, the two sides of that.
Yeah,
so
the twins. I'm a Gemini, so I was curious, but yeah, that's that's a very beautiful little tribute there.
Yes, it is. And we named our son after him, and his name is Renato. We called him Renny, R-E-N-Y, and that's my son's name as well. So it's great. Yeah, great that he named that song. I actually had trouble trying to reproduce that song for Terminal Velocity because I had no version of it to reference.
So it kind of just like was reimagined almost.
Well, yeah. I mean, all that I had to go on YouTube and search out.
Steal
like,
from yourself?
Yeah, I had to find, we looked for the best like YouTube bootleg version of somebody at a guitar clinic filming me play that. And that's the audio that I went by and kind of extrapolated what I meant to play and built the song off of that. So that was a challenge, but we got it done.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
That sounds like I've
like a mission.
Yeah. Yeah, like you have old recordings. Like I found an old hard drive recently from stuff that I recorded in college, and I'm like, oh my! And it's like your fingers go back to the place that they haven't been in 10 years or something. It's like, oh yeah, I loved this thing that you forgot all about.
The other interesting thing about that is we talked about Happy Song. There were two songs that I played live on G3 a few times and at my Guitar Universe camps. Happy Song and Glassy Eyed Zombies. But there was also a third song that I wrote in that same period that I meant to play on G3. It was called The Way Things Fall. It actually wasn't the title, but I demoed it fully, wrote it, demoed it, and totally forgot about it. I never played it on G3. It just sat on my hard drive. And when I was doing the research to start Terminal Velocity, collect song ideas and everything, I found that. I'm like, what is this? And there was a full song. I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about this. This song is cool. And
you're thanking yourself from the past. You're like, nice.
That's right. And decided to record a real version of it. So that was a nice surprise.
The first time you bring up G3, the first time I saw you live was I believe in 2005 in Boston at G3. And it was you, Paul Gilbert, and Joe Satriani. And you've been part of other lineups too with guys like Steve Vai and Eric Johnson, Uli John Roth. Do you have a funny G3 story? Like something backstage or on stage?
Oh, man. I have a great G3 story. There's so many funny ones. We were playing in Philadelphia. And, in G3, there's three different guitar players. And at the end, we all jammed. So Joe was doing his set. And I was waiting backstage with my wife, Raina. Kind of hear him, sort of know what time I had to be on stage. Mm-hmm. And we're just chilling out. Joe's on stage. I know I'm going to play in about a half hour, whatever it is. And all of a sudden we hear like a sound in the room. Mm-hmm. And it sounded like, there was like an animal in the wall or something. Like, what the hell is that? And then we're in the room and it had a drop ceiling. And then right above us, all of a sudden, like we see a foot come through the ceiling, and then like a hand, and then a whole person was like, it was like hatched from the ceiling and like fell on us. Like all like my guitars were there, Raina and I were there. It like the ceiling stuff cut my arm and everything.
Oh wow!
And I was like totally surprised, but also really pissed, and took the guy. I was like, what the hell is the matter? Walked him down. It was an old theater, so flights and flights of steps. Yeah. And got, I don't know, got security and threw the guy.
So it wasn't like a maintenance guy doing work? It was just an intruder?
It was an inebriated patron who somehow found his way through a door, through the rafters, in the ceiling.
Oh.
Was totally lost.
And he stepped through the drywall ceiling.
Yeah, and then I got on stage and I had like bandages on my arms and everything for the jam, and I guess word got around the stage and everything. And Joe, we're jamming, and he's like goes up to me, he's like, "What happened?"
That's rock and roll.
It's like, yeah, I heard you brought down the house.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
You
So
had to
I don't know,
throw a man out.
maybe people heard that before, but that's a pretty epic G3 funny story.
Maybe you were like a bouncer in an alternate universe.
Possible.
You like channeled that.
I have done security at my my daughter's dance recital, so
Okay.
I do have a security shirt with my name on it, so
Great.
don't put it past me.
Yeah, I wouldn't mess with you. So that concert I mentioned where I saw you was at Berklee College of Music. And
Cool.
it was where I went to school, and it's where you went to school. And you're back playing music with your longtime pal, Mike Portnoy, who you met in Berklee, right? Or was it even before that?
Yeah, we met there. No,
Okay,
we met there.
You met at Berklee. And
exactly.
so it's interesting to, like, when you have someone who went to regular high school, like your regular high school friends or your regular college friends for some people, it's different when you go to a music college and you meet people who really speak your language that you didn't even know that you spoke necessarily.
Right.
So that must have been hugely satisfying to reunite and kind of get back on. It's like you pick up where you left off almost musically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, John Myung and I, we grew up together. We went to Berklee together. We were roommates, and we met Mike there. I mean, we were all 18 years old, but it turned out that Mike was actually, obviously Berklee's in Boston, but Mike was from Long Island as well.
Right.
So it wasn't like too far of a stretch. He lived in a town about an hour away from us, and we just liked all the same music and bands, and just growing up on Long Island had the same kind of, upbringing, I guess. So that was the immediate connection, because Berklee is a very international school, even more so now than it was then. But, people come from all over the world and all over the country. So we could have met anybody. They could have been from Australia or anywhere, but we happened to meet another Long Islander who we related to and then formed this band. So, yeah, fast forward in the band 25 years together, Mike leaves, and now 10 years since he left, I asked him to do this record. And I'm so happy that I did, and that he said yes, and that he did it because, like you said, this record has a very uplifting vibe. I think the story of Mike sort of reuniting with me musically on this helped contribute to that, because just that in itself is very positive. Especially during this crazy pandemic and everything that's going on. And his playing, I wrote the record, recorded the guitars, and then he recorded the drums to those guitars in my studio. But just his approach and his sort of lively, off the cuff, playing style helps to make those songs like Happy Song Terminal, Temple, like have all this energy and spirit. So it was a very just overall real positive vibe. I love the way the fans responded to that. No drama and BS, just like happy to see us together, and great positive response to the record. So that was really encouraging as well.
Yeah, it really shone through.
Yeah.
And so when you were in Boston, do you have any memories from being 18 in Boston? Because Boston's like my favorite city in the world. Just
love Boston.
It's a perfect campus, and like
absolutely
one of my favorite memories is there's this place called Crazy Doughs, which was right across the street from the 150 Mass Ave building.
Yeah,
and we had our the band that I played in college had a practice space underneath Crazy Doughs.
Oh, that's funny.
And walking through the city carrying a pedal board, a guitar, a backpack in the streets of Boston, I was like 140 pounds, and like that was my experience. And I just like recall the smell of pizza and shred and being tired all the time. Is there any nostalgic feeling that you get from Boston?
Oh, definitely. I mean, my son graduated Berklee as well, and
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, he actually was. He was the first resident in the 160 building, the new building.
Oh yeah, there used to be a McDonald's there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They tore down my beloved McDonald's.
Yeah, so Boston's changed a lot. Berklee, when I went, they had the two buildings. They had 150 Mass Ave and Boylston.
Yep.
That's all they had. So obviously they expanded a lot. I loved being there. on Berkeley Beach, and
Yep.
seeing all the kids, just like me with gig bags over there. I felt like I really, really belonged. And what the place for us that you're talking about was Supreme Pizza.
Supremes
And,
was there when
yeah, Supremes.
I had some
Yeah.
late nights at Supremes.
Lots of late nights. There was no like Wendy's or Starbucks or any of that,
Yeah.
or JP Licks and all those places.
Yeah.
But there was Supreme, so we always ordered Supremes. We get like cheesesteaks and things like that. But we rehearsed almost every day, and we were always in this one specific rehearsal room that was E19, and that's where we practiced. So yeah, lots of great memories from that. Even though it was only 2 semesters, it was only 1 year that we went there.
Oh, right on. Yeah. So you obviously, in that short time, your guitar tone has kind of evolved over the years, but I would say maybe around your first solo album, it really started to round into this. I don't know how you would describe. I mean, it's like the Thanos of guitar tone. It's like this. It's
Right.
like this milky curtain of sound. And I reference, like the lead sound, I guess, is what I associate most. This like blooming, beautiful overtone, kind of ridden sound. And I was wondering if you want to like just brag about that for a second, because it seems like it's something that people ask, what kind of gear do you play, blah, blah, blah. But it seems like you've really fine-tuned your guitar tone over the years and really been meticulously changing intricate parts of it. Can you like give us the dumbed down version of what under the hood you've been working on?
Well, the biggest thing is a long time ago, I got turned on to Mesa Boogie amps. And, you don't know why you identify with a certain type of tone or sound or amplifier, but you just do. You connect, you plug in, you're like, man, this thing sounds awesome. Like, I feel like I can do anything. And so in those early days, I was playing boogies, and that was like the part of helping me develop the sound that I heard in my head. I got turned on to the Mark II-C Plus, which is like one of their, iconic holy grail amps of all time. That's Master of Puppets amp and everything else. And that really, I really identified with the sound of that amp. Like when I plugged in my guitar, I felt like that thing could do anything. That kind of milky lead thing you're talking about, but also super heavy crunch and stuff like that. I played boogies for years and years and years and years and years. Fast forward, I was able to develop the first signature Mesa Boogie amp based on that iconic C+. So that's part of it. So part of, getting this tone that I heard in my head was the initial connection with Boogie, but also working with Boogie, those same people, Randall Smith, the same guy who designed the first Mark I that Carlos Santana played, to design the JP2C and really, really get it dialed to where it's the ultimate amp that does everything my imagination is cooking up. The other part of that is obviously the guitar and the pickups. Now, DiMarzio I've been with for ever, from the beginning, and I had such a great relationship with Larry DiMarzio and Steve Blucher, who designs the pickups. And over the course of these years, we've honed in on what I'm looking for. Having, maybe this has too much high end, maybe it needs to be rounder, maybe the low end needs to be a little less clogged so these notes could sing more. Right. So the development of the pickups and having signature pickups through the years has helped too. And then finally, the biggest piece are the guitars. Now, Ernie Ball Music Man, I first met Sterling Ball 20 years ago, and we're celebrating 20 years of developing these incredible signature instruments. And again, that journey of developing, what sound am I hearing? What does mahogany sound like? What does maple and alder and basswood sound like? What about the electronics, the layout, et cetera, et cetera? So you take those pieces of the puzzle over the course of many, many years, since Suspended, 15 years. And here I am with what are the ultimate pieces of the puzzle that perfectly do what I've been thinking of this whole time. I call that process, I name my business as the tone mission. It's like people's tone mission. It's how the path that you take, the journey that you take to get the sound that's in your head finally realized. And I've been fortunate enough to do that working with these incredible, companies to develop the signature gear. But that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if that's a dumbed down version, but
no, that's the perfect amount.
Yeah, the best way for me to describe it. And so now
I don't think you breathed during that entire description. It seems like you're pretty passionate about that.
I'm totally passionate about it. And the fun thing is I just get to reap the benefits because, recording terminal, it's just a joy. I mean, I plug in the Majesty into the head, dial it the way I'm used to dialing it, and it just sounds awesome. Okay, record that. Like you're not sitting there trying to get a tone for hours and frustrated and trying different amps and, I don't know about this guitar and what about this? There's none of that. It's like gone. It's just like this guitar, plug it into that head and mic it. Go,
Tone mission accomplished.
Tone mission accomplished. Absolutely.
I have a lot of your gear in case you haven't noticed. This is a
I see that.
JP15.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
it looks
Koa.
awesome.
Got
really
the
nice.
Piezo. You call it piezo or piezo?
Well, I've been saying piezo. I people say it both ways. That all the Ernie Ball Music Man guitars. I mean, not just my models, but all the ones they make are just works of art. They
really are.
They are the real deal. They are passionate about what they do. They're artists, and they're guitar players. They're innovators, and they just make the best guitars on the planet. They're everyone. I'm just looking at even on the video. I'm like, that's a beautiful instrument.
It is delightful. I got a couple more things for you, and then I'll let you get on with your day. But this is actually recent news, and we can cut this part out if you're not supposed to talk about it. But I heard rumblings of an 8-string guitar.
Yeah.
Is that real, or is that just like a fantasy in the Twitterverse?
No, they're rumblings. They're real rumblings. We have been talking about this for a while. Developing an 8-string version of the Majesty. We did a whole bunch of research, went through some drawings and stuff, and so now it's a reality that we're talking about building. And I'm hoping to get a prototype real soon. Mm-hmm. What I would really love to do, it didn't work out on the last Dream Theater record scheduling wise, but hopefully with the next one, which we're going to start working on really soon, is to have one in time for so that I can experiment with it and write with it. But yeah, those rumblings are true. I have nothing to show you yet, but in due time, that will be a reality. So I'm excited about that. And I have no experience playing an 8-string, so I'm just approaching this from total.
It'll be like the gypsy jazz experiment. You'll just go into your hole and come out on the other side.
Right. I relate it to, I've said this before as well, I relate it to back when we wrote Awake and I got my first 7-string sent to the studio. I picked this up. It was a Steve Vai version, green pickups, same one that's in the live video. And she started writing. I never played a 7-string before. And we wrote The Mirror and all that. I was like, this is awesome.
Nice. A couple more questions for you, John. What is your favorite airplane album?
To listen to on an airplane?
Yeah.
I don't know if I wouldn't say I have a favorite, but what I do, I find that time a really good time to like listen to what I happen to be working on. Because I don't do that too often. Like, especially, I don't know, when producing a record and like getting to the point where you're listening to mixes and mastering, it gets very technical and you're listening for things, you're listening for level and EQ. And I don't really get a chance to like just listen to it as an objective listener.
It's like what we talked about at the very beginning, like kind of stepping back and enjoying
exactly.
what you're creating and making sure you're in the right direction too for this.
Right. So on the plane, I like to just, put in the headphones and like put on the record, like to actually listen to it.
Yeah.
I've done that a bunch of times and just take it in as an objective listener. So that's something I enjoy doing because it's just like uninterrupted time where you have nothing else going on, no distractions.
Okay. Build a band.
Yeah.
What 4 others in a band, living or dead, would you want to play with? So it's a 5-person band. You're on guitar. Who are the other 4 members?
Oh my God. Well, I'd have to have Geddy Lee on bass. That'd be dream come true. I always thought it would be cool. Let me see. It has how many members are we talking here?
Four other than you, so
Okay.
5 total.
It'd be great playing with Dennis Chambers. I've always been a fan of his drumming. He's a monster drummer.
He's an unbelievable drummer.
Yeah. Peter Gabriel would have to like be the vocalist. He's like my favorite.
I like this band so far.
You're pretty good, right?
One more.
I don't know. One more. Now, what instrument does it have? Could it be anything?
It could be a keyboard. It could be a harp player. It could be a flautist.
Oh man.
Or another guitar player. Whoever you want.
Who could it be? I don't know. It'd be. We'll have Andre Segovia on classical guitar and see what happens.
Jeez, that's an amazing band.
Wow, that's a band. That's insane.
That's great. All right, finally, to loop in your guitar supervillain alter ego, I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
What do you believe about guitar that most guitar players would think is crazy? This could be a hard truth for guitar players that they need to hear, or something you know that others don't, or a misconception about the instrument, or whatever you want. What do you believe about the guitar or guitar playing that others might not believe?
Well, I think that my strongest belief, and I think a lot of players would actually relate to this. That's the only problem with my answer. But my strongest belief, and I'm very biased, is I think that electric guitar specifically is the most expressive musical instrument other than a voice. That's my true feeling. I really think that. There's something about electric guitar being amplified through something with distortion, being able to manipulate the strings and everything that we do with pedals and whatnot, that it's just, I don't know, the most moving and expressive instrument more than anything else. But again, I'm biased. People will probably argue that point that play other instruments, and rightly so. I have respect for all that. And the other thing I would say as well, and this kind of this comes down to something that people have talked about before, is that we talked about tone and the development of gear and stuff, and you might have heard players say this too, but tone really comes from individual players' hands and their approach to the instrument. And this could be proven by you and somebody else playing through the exact same rig and sounding completely different, even if you're playing the same thing. So that's something that people, as much as we focus on tone and gear development and stuff, which is important, it's also important to note that who you are actually physically, biologically, has a lot to do with how you sound on guitar. And that circles back to why it's such an expressive instrument, because you're just completely physically connected to it directly, and it comes out. So it's pretty crazy.
I agree.
All right.
So, John,
awesome.
as we wind down here, I'd like to thank you for being the inaugural guest on Guitar Villains. I couldn't have picked a better person to do that, so I really do appreciate it. It's been an honor to chat with you, and we'll look forward to seeing and hearing what treacherous plots you devise next in your musical endeavors.
Perfect. Well, me too. Congratulations on your new program. Thanks for having me be your inaugural guest. I wish you the best of luck with it. I love all your sound effects and your format. I think it's going to do really great. So
thank you,
best of luck with it. Awesome. Thanks for having me.